Of the world, people with albinism face significant stigmatization and discrimination. They have misconception about their condition which can lead to social exclusion, bullying, and unfair treatment in various aspects of life, including education, employment, and social interaction. Meanwhile, in some cultures, particularly in parts of Africa, there are deeply rooted superstition and myths about albinism. This can include beliefs that individuals with albinism possess magical powers or bring bad luck. Such myths can lead to extreme consequences, including violence and exploitation. People with albinism often face health issues related to their conditions such as vision problems and a heightened risk of skin cancer due to their lack of melanin. Societal neglect and lack of access to appropriate healthcare can exacerbate these issues. Today, on the topic albinism, we are going to explore the medical conditions such as the social, cultural aspects and shed light on challenges faced by individuals with albinism. Understanding and awareness are crucial in supporting individuals with albinism and ensuring they lead a healthy and fulfilling lives. Welcome to Health 247. I am your host, Irene Okechukwu, and today with me I have a guest who is a director and also the founder of Women and Girls with Albinism Network. She is going to tell us what we need to know about albinism and also shed more light on this very topic, albinism. As you all know, every 13th of June is being recognized as the International Albinism Day. So we are going to be celebrating 10 years of International Awareness Albinism Day with the theme, A Decade of Collective Progress. That is, everybody has to put hands on deck to ensure that people with albinism do not face discrimination, are not being discriminated in the society. So join me as I introduce my guest in the studio. She is Mrs. Constance Onyemechi, and she's going to tell us more. Constance Onyemechi, you're welcome to the program Health 247.
Thank you very much, Irene. Thank you for having me.
How do you feel being part of this program, Health 247 today?
Oh, well, it's an honor to be here, and it's a great privilege to be invited to also speak on albinism, seeing that I am also a person with albinism.
Interesting. Can you give us an overview of what albinism is?
Okay, thank you very much. So I'll start by explaining in simpler terms what albinism is, because a lot of people believe in different versions. But albinism is a genetic condition which leads to low production of melanin or no production of melanin. So it goes both ways. There are some persons with albinism who do not have any production of melanin, and there are others who have low production of melanin. Now, when the gene, melanin is supposed to be for skin pigmentation, right? So for persons with albinism, we do not have sufficient production of melanin, and that is what makes us persons with albinism. Now, when you talk about albinism, you know, there are two types. You have the ocular, you have the oculocutaneous. Now, the ocular simply means that ocular means eyes. You can see someone who is dark-skinned, but the person's eyeballs look different. So some people like that have ocular albinism. But the most common form of albinism is oculocutaneous. Now, oculocutaneous means albinism affects the skin, the hair, and the eyes. Now, for oculocutaneous albinism, you have 6 subtypes of oculocutaneous, which means that you might see two persons with albinism, two oculocutaneous albinism. They look the same, but they are not actually the same. And they do not require the same needs. They do not require the same reasonable accommodation. And one predominant thing when it comes to albinism is the skin and then the eyes. We have low vision. But
Okay.
because we have different variants of oculocutaneous, we see in varying degrees. So you might see an oculocutaneous person who has albinism see better than the next, and you'll be wondering, oh, why is it that this person doesn't use glasses and this one uses? It's because they are both oculocutaneous, but not of the same kind of oculocutaneous albinism. Now, there's another form of albinism which is called Hermansky-Pudlak. That comes with blood cancer. Now, people who have Hermansky-Pudlak always have, when it comes to cancer of the blood and all that. But in Africa, the most common kind of albinism is oculocutaneous. Now, I cannot say if it is oculocutaneous 1A or 1B or oculocutaneous 2 because they are of different types, because we do not have the resources in place to do genetic testings to find out, okay, what kind of oculocutaneous is this? We do not have that. But one thing I do know is that in Africa, we have persons with albinism who have oculocutaneous albinism. More of oculocutaneous and less of ocular.
Interesting. Oh, well, so I wanted to ask you a question while you were still explaining what oculocutaneism means and other things, but I said I don't want to go through that aspect because I'm not a scientist. I don't really know much about that. But I want to be more of a layman, and I want to ask you this question. How does albinism affect individuals' social interaction and their experience? Because this is where it comes. This is what affects them daily. So how does it affect them?
Okay, so albinism affects persons with albinism. I always use myself. I'm a person with albinism. So it affects us differently.
Okay.
You know, we have 36 states in Nigeria. 6 geographical zones with different cultural beliefs.
Sure.
So my experience as a person with albinism might not be the same experience for others. You understand?
Yeah.
But one thing we do face when it comes to societal challenges that is not changing is the stigma and the discrimination when it comes to albinism. You see, there's an orphanage home in Kuje, Abuja. I went there when I was in my 300 level because it's an orphanage home. I mean, you go there to give out pains.
Yeah.
And then I saw a child with albinism. As at that time, she was 3 years old. And I was curious because I've never seen a child with albinism in an orphanage home.
Oh, wow.
So I had to ask. And I was told that the parents of that young girl were actually alive, but they had to bring her to that orphanage home to protect her because in her community, it's a taboo to have a child with albinism. So if you do have a child with albinism, you're meant to kill that child. That child is not supposed to be alive.
That's the superstition we're talking about.
Yes. So the parents had to take her to the orphanage home. And presently, she's still there because I do go there to the orphanage home to give her sunscreens for sun protection.
Yeah.
So you see that the stigma, the discrimination is still very much there in different parts of the society.
Yeah.
Then you also look at our skin condition. You know, because of albinism, we do not have enough production of melanin to protect us from the UV rays.
Yeah.
And now there's climate change. You see that the weather has become harsh than before. Before we, avoid the sun from 9 a.m. to 4:30. But now the weather is quite unpredictable.
Exactly, due to climate change.
Yes, due to climate change. So once it's 6 a.m., the sun is already out. You don't know when to go out and when not to as a person with albinism. So you see, it's a constraint for us because now we have to, our lives are limited to the climate. And because of our lack of melanin, our little production of melanin, we are more prone to skin cancer.
Sure.
Before it generates to skin cancer, we are more prone to sunburn, warts, and when you find anything of freckles, you have to check if it is cancerous or not. So this is also one of the societal challenges we face. We also have the issue of the sight. You know, for persons with albinism, it's quite a challenge to see far, and sometimes it can be very daunting because you have tired eyes most days and you just want to be like every other melanated person. Some days I want to be like, okay, I have melanin, but other days I'm like, okay, wow, I like the fact that I'm like this. I mean,
You're
if we
embracing
all, yeah, I
who
mean,
you
if we
are.
all look the same, the world
Yeah.
would be a boring place.
It's true. That's
So
true.
yeah, these are quite a number of challenges that we face in the society, and most times these things are fueled by people's belief, people's biases. You know, when they come to the society, they already come from a place where they have cultural norms.
Yeah.
And you expect them to just drop it. They can't drop it
easily.
overnight. So,
Yeah.
you know, these things, because your culture makes you, it molds you. And sometimes you have to shed a little part of it to accommodate or change your narrative of what you have learned over the years to accommodate certain kinds of people. So it's difficult because the cultural roles play most times in if I have to put it in on a scale of 1 to 10, cultural norms are more negative for persons with albinism than positive.
Interesting. There is this thought of people that say that if I don't want to say this openly, but I must speak it out.
Yeah, please do.
Because they say that some people in those days, I don't know whether it still happens now, they say that that some people, some society used to use those people with albinism, like use them for ritual, that, or they'll say if they meet them, they will become rich, like kind of super. And at the point, if you go to some part, they kill them. Like, I've heard of stories like that, and I become inquisitive. I'm like, why would you kill a human being? They say no, that they are they have supernatural powers. Like, I don't really understand that. So can you help me?
It's still happening.
Okay.
I would say not. I can't say it's in Nigeria because you know, reporting of such cases is quite low. So I can't really say okay, it's happening in Nigeria because I don't have data to support that. But from what I have read online, I think it's still happening in places like Tanzania.
To date?
Yes, to date.
Wow.
I saw a story of a person with albinism. Give or take, because they had to carry out an autopsy to find out how old the lady is. I think she'd be in her 20s. Her body parts were removed, her arms, her legs, and I also read a story of a woman who was dating someone.
Yeah, she is
no, she's dark skinned, not in Nigeria.
Okay,
dating someone, and then she ended up giving birth to a child with albinism, and her boyfriend, the one that got her pregnant, came to carry the child to be used for ritual sacrifice. Can you
imagine this?
And she had to protect the child, but the man kept sending different people to kidnap the child, and you know, things like that have been happening. But I'll tell you from my own experience, when I was in Lagos, there's this thing they call Oro. Now, Oro is when a king dies, and you know, they have to bury the king with, with 7 heads, I think.
Certain rituals.
Yeah, so they go out, they look for strangers in that community that they will kill to bury the. And one jolly good afternoon, I was just, you know, heading out to church because majorly we know they do the Oro festival midnight. But this time around, I don't know what happened. They didn't announce nothing. I just saw them out there, white on white, and I was scared. I had to run, but I ran into the compound. I ran into my house, and they came to the gates there.
Really?
Yes, they stood there for a long time. But I couldn't come out because, you know, I was so scared.
Yeah.
But when, you know, when I kept hearing people walking on the road and people talking, I said, okay, fine, it's safe. When I came out, you know, one neighbor who saw what happened through her window was like, why did you run? You shouldn't have run now. We call people like you Osha. Osha means that you are a god that should be worshipped. That they will just take me to the palace and keep me there and begin to worship me, and I'll be seeing visions for them. And in my head, I'm like, I've not even seen vision for myself. How do I see visions for the community?
Wow.
So that's, you see that it is different cultures from different places. And this is the Southwest. I don't know how it works in the northern part of Nigeria. Then in the East, you know, we were not really listened to. That's just it, because people feel, okay, what are you going to say when we can listen to people who are dark-skinned, who they feel are human beings and we are not. Even on social media, you see people bullying persons with albinism.
That's true.
Oh, why are you talking? We're having a conversation. You're not supposed to have an opinion.
Inappropriate.
Yes, you're not supposed to have an opinion. And then the media brings persons with albinism to make skits that do not portray the positive sides of persons with albinism. You see persons with albinism themselves acting these skits, acting like they are blind, they can't see, they are totally, completely blind.
That shows that they're even accepting that.
Yes, and the effect of what they are doing is to demean the self-esteem of others, because as a person with albinism, it takes time to build a healthy self-esteem, especially when you're from a family that are not receptive. They don't receive you just the way you are. There are a lot of family members who do not even want to associate with you because you're a person without, even your mom might not want to, you know, take you by the hand and say, okay, my child, you're a person with albinism, that's fine, it's genetic. So, you know, people come from different angles to think that a person with albinism, maybe you offended the gods somewhere and you got pregnant and the gods want to punish you by giving you
that's the myopic way of people reasoning.
Yes, because I had a conversation with a lady with albinism. You know, I was worried. She had these freckles all over her face. She said when her mom gave birth to her mom took her to traditional herbalists to find out why she has a child with albinism. And the traditionalist told her that this child you're looking at, in her former life, she was rich.
You don't mean it.
Now she's back to make you poor. And then the mother abandoned her.
You don't mean it.
Yes. So she had to struggle for herself. She had to do menial jobs. And that's why she ended up having those freckles on her face. She had no one to lead her. A lot of husbands, as I speak, abandon wives who give birth to children with albinism.
That's so terrible of
because
them.
They ask, oh, we don't have it in our family. Where did you get it from? Okay, fine. You have offended someone, so the person wants to punish you, or the gods want to punish you. So 2024, men are still abandoning their wives who have a child with albinism.
That's so terrible. If any man should abandon his wife or family because he has a child that was born with albinism, that man has committed an offense. He should be even punished for that because it's wrong, totally unacceptable.
True.
Yeah, it's totally unacceptable because I see everybody, any person who is born with albinism is also a human, like any other person.
It's just melanin.
Just
that's
a lack of
difference.
Pigmentation, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So why should any man abandon his family or his wife? Anyways, we are going to go on a short break, and when we come back, we are going to talk more on albinism. Stay tuned. All right, viewers, welcome back on this topic, albinism. So we were just talking about how people discriminate those with albinism and how even husbands go as far as abandoning their wives who give birth to babies with albinism. So now I want to ask you, how can we manage such? What are the strategies to manage such?
Okay, so for albinism, I mean, if you're pregnant, you have a normal pregnancy symptom, but there's no symptom to show that this child you're carrying is a child with albinism. And like I said, we've not done enough research in this part of the world to be able to ascertain if you're carrying a child with albinism or not. We don't even have such genetic testing. So I'm going to talk about how to manage when you have a child, when you've given birth to a child with albinism, or you have a cousin or nephew or niece who has albinism. Now, you have to be sun smart. So when we say sun smart, it doesn't mean the child does not or shouldn't go out to play, but you need to be sure that you take good care of the skin of that child by using sunscreen.
Okay.
Sun protection formula 50 plus and above. You have to apply it on the skin of that child and read the instructions, because there are some sunscreens you have to reapply after 60 minutes. There are others you have to reapply after 80 minutes. But look for a good sunscreen. It can be lotion based or whichever, but make sure it is good for the skin. Secondly, you get wide brimmed hats for your child, because it helps protect, especially if you have either a boy child or a girl child. there are freckles that can happen on the scalp of that child.
Wow.
So the sun-brimmed hat protects the scalp and also shields, the sun from disturbing the eyes, because we don't do well under the sun. And also ensure your child gets proper covering. So the child is going out, it should be long sleeve. The child is going to work outside or play outside, because you can't stop a child from playing, but you can also protect that child. So you have to get long sleeved clothing for that child. If that child is going to go out swimming, you still have to get that child sunscreen. Sunscreen should be something that is always with that child. Okay. Yes. We understand that sunscreen is expensive, but at the same time, it is a necessity for a person with albinism. It's not a luxury. Yeah. Now, for the eyes, you have to keep on taking that child out for testings. Okay. Because as a person with albinism, both eyes, the strength of both eyes are not the same. So you can't just sit down and buy off-the-road glasses for that child. You have to take that child for proper testing so that an ophthalmologist can make good decisions and prescribe good glasses for that child. You can do that. You can go to either a government hospital or a private hospital to do that, but ensure that that child is well protected. Now, there's something I want to address too when it comes to care. Some people say, oh, persons with albinism should not eat salt or do not eat salt. Please ensure that there's enough quantity of salt in the food. Really? Every human being needs salt. Okay. I am a person with albinism. I also watch my salt intake. I do not abstain from salt. Okay. So that's one of the myths that should be removed. Ensure that the child eats a well-balanced food. Okay. Fruits, food, vegetables. We also eat pepper. Do not deprive the child of pepper. People say, oh, you don't eat pepper. When you eat pepper, you get red. No, it's not the pepper that makes us red. It's either you are stressing us, or the sun is just too much, or the weather is hot. A person with albinism can be indoor and still become red, because, getting red has to do with heat. So if the place is hot, the person can turn red, but it has nothing to do with either salt or pepper. So ensure that the child with albinism eats a balanced meal with fruits and vegetables.
Interesting. So moving up, I wanted to ask you, what role should schools and also workplaces play in an inclusive environment that's for those with the albinism? There's some places that I know of. Some people with the albinism have complained to me that they cannot get a good job, because when they go for interview, they will tell them that they don't need stress in such places. They want to just take people who do not have albinism. It's more like you're discriminating them. At the end of the day, you see them doing some menial jobs that they are not supposed to do, and that menial job will expose them to some certain risks to either their skin or their health. So, what role should the society play, either in the school or workplaces?
Okay, thank you. So I'll start by addressing the issue of the workplace. Now, the Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Prohibition Act 2018 makes stipulations for the protection of rights of all persons, including persons with albinism. And in the act, it talks about 5% employment for every person with disability, including persons with albinism. So I think that job providers should go look at the provisions of that act and ensure that they do not contravene the provisions, else they can be sued on that ground.
Interesting.
Because the window period for the act has ended in January. Now it's the implementation process, and at this stage where we are, job providers can be sued, because persons with albinism are also persons with disabilities too. I do understand that it is a tad bit difficult for persons with albinism to get jobs because of, like I said, misconceptions. A lot of persons with albinism have low vision, and a lot of job providers do not want to go the extra mile to provide reasonable accommodation for these people, because they think it is expensive to provide. Meanwhile, the person with albinism already possesses the skills and the knowledge to be very productive in your workplace. So I would say that the job providers have to give persons with albinism a chance.
Okay.
And also go out there to ask, what reasonable accommodation will you be needing, rather than assuming. Because I said, persons with albinism see in varying degrees. There are some who do not even need any reasonable accommodation. When you ask them, they might say, okay, I'm fine. I can use the computer without any reasonable accommodation. There are others who will say, no, I can't function unless I'm provided reasonable accommodation. And reasonable accommodation really ordinary just translates to what I need to be productive. I might need a larger screen.
Yeah.
I mean, how much is a larger screen? If you can buy a laptop for others, why can't you buy a large screen for me? My reasonable accommodation can be, okay, I just need these materials in bold prints. So the job seekers should ensure that they do not, discard persons with albinism just because they are persons with albinism, but they should look at what they need. Once they are qualified to get that job description, you can ask for, what is the reasonable accommodation you'll be needing? You'll find out that it will even cost you less. The second part is that a lot of job providers take advantage of persons with albinism, women with albinism especially.
Wow.
Because there are no policies in the office to guard against sexual exploitation. And they take advantage because the job provider might be coming from a society or from a culture that says, if you sleep with a woman with albinism, you will get rich. Now he's coming into the workspace with that mindset, and he sees a lady with albinism, and he wants to test out the theory on the woman. Now there are no policies in place to protect the rights of the woman in the workspace. So I think job providers should also look into ensuring that when persons with albinism or persons with disabilities or whoever is working in that space, their rights should be protected. Now for the schools, we've noticed that we when you talk about children who are dropouts, we also have children with albinism who are dropouts.
That's true.
Because to them, education is not fun. I'll use myself as an example.
Really?
Going to school, I didn't find it fun,
Really?
Because I would go to school, I would be in class, and they would be like, when you go to the classroom and the teacher is there, the teacher will just keep reading.
Yeah.
And you're not seeing
and you're not seeing well, even from the board.
And then you'll be like, excuse me, I can't see the board. Now, this is primary school. I'm not talking about secondary school. I was in primary school.
Imagine when you are using chalk.
Exactly. Blackboard with chalk.
Yeah.
I had to say, please, I can't see from my seat position. Can I pick somewhere to sit? And the headmaster got upset. I mean, in class, we're 25. Just leave the 25th position for me. It is my right.
Yeah.
Nobody drags it with me. I wasn't doing well in class. And nobody was interested.
Nobody cared about you.
I would go home and cry. I would tell my father, I can't see. My parents were in denial. How can you say you cannot see and all that?
They did not understand.
They didn't understand,
yes.
And then one day I told my father, I see, this school, I don't want to go to school. I was in primary 3. I wasn't in secondary school.
Wow.
I didn't see education as fun. My father said, do you want to fry akara? And when I thought about the process of frying akara, I said, no, I don't want to fry akara, but I don't want to go to school. So how are we going to do this? So my dad had to remove me from that school. He took me to another school. And then when we got there, my dad said, she said she cannot see the board. Please, is there anything you can do? They took me into the classroom. And the teacher asked me, just tell us at the point where you can see the board from.
You were so happy.
I stood in front of the board, and then I kept moving backwards a bit. And I stopped at the point I said I can see from this point. And they moved my desk to that point. Yeah. So I was the only one sitting there. I was, when they say you are in front of the class, there is a front and there is a front.
Yes.
And my dad left. I enjoyed going to school.
Interesting.
That term, I took 7th position.
Wow.
When I took my report card from my father, I was like, I know you have come again with your last position, just bring it. I showed it to him. He said 7th. So you can take 7th position.
Imagine.
The following term, I came 3rd. And that was when my dad understood that I wasn't just crying, but truly I could not see.
Yeah.
And the teachers at the former school were not ready to do anything. Now that is the problem we face in our educational system. The teachers are not trained to understand that there are diverse people in the society. There are diverse students in the classroom. You have slow learners, you have fast learners. You cannot use a one-size-fits-all for all because we don't always function at the same pace.
That's true.
And that has to also do with persons with albinism. We noticed we have a lot of children with albinism who are dropouts. Not because they cannot afford their fees, but because the environment is not welcoming. So for me, I think that the educators should be trained. They should be well trained to understand that the society is made up of diverse people.
Yeah.
And it is not a one-size-fits-all approach. When it comes to persons with albinism, ask, do not assume. Ask, what would you be needing? If the child is not old enough to express him or herself, you can ask the parents. The parents will be very glad. What would this child need in the classroom? Now, education goes beyond just the classroom writing. It also includes extracurricular activities. How inclusive are your sport wears? How inclusive are your uniforms? A lot of schools will say, oh, no, it is our policy that we must have only short sleeves. But when you have a child with albinism, make it flexible.
Exactly.
It should be long sleeves. The same thing for the sportswear. They should also include assistive devices, such as assistive options, sunscreens. A school can provide sunscreen and say, we don't know, we might have a child with albinism, and if the child is playing to avoid sunburn, let us help this child. They can also have wide-brimmed hats. Inclusive curriculum. The teachers should also be aware. The school now should be taught on albinism so that they can teach others.
All right, further, if we're moving on further, so how do we now create this awareness? You will engage stakeholders, advocacy organizations on how we can spread this awareness, at least create a sensitization program for people to know how to live with those with albinism and also know how to treat people. So what have people done about that?
Okay, so what we do is we create awareness. Like what I'm doing right here is also creating awareness.
Yeah.
So yes, we work with media houses to create awareness on issues persons with albinism face. We also have people who volunteer to also create awareness on their different pages. We also work with the media houses to ensure that the message they pass down to the public on albinism is true and correct. Now, for policies, like I talked about the Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Prohibition Act, that was a collective effort of diverse clusters of disability. So we're also part of it. We also liaise with the policy makers to see how we can make the policies that are being reviewed also inclusive of persons with albinism. We have a policy on education for persons with albinism, but then again, we also need to look at how it is being implemented and how we can enforce
Especially that one that you said some husbands will leave their wives. That one is really painful. It's breaking my heart.
Yeah, well,
I don't really
I mean,
that.
You can't force a man to stay with a woman.
But
that's
it's wrong.
Another
what
thing.
about
he's wrong,
now
but
neglecting the innocent child? You know, the child will now grow up to know that the father abandoned her because of her color.
I think that for us to address this issue, we also work with caregivers. Caregivers of children with albinism, parents to children with albinism, to ensure that they also understand. Because we found out that there's a knowledge gap from parent to child. A parent might give birth to a child with albinism. I've been on the WhatsApp group for parents who have children with albinism, and the woman came and said, I just put to bed yesterday and my child is a child with albinism. What should I do? And because we are persons with albinism and we have parents there, we had to now guide her. Oh, do this, don't do this, do this, because she didn't know what to do. The baby came as a surprise. So we had to now tell her, don't be frightened. She said, oh, I just gave birth to the baby. I don't know if this baby can see me. His eyes are just going peep, peep. And I was like, so the parents had to, we laughed, you know, but we found out that she was very serious. So we told her, there's no need for you to panic. The child sees you. Don't bother about the eye movement. Just wait. As the child grows older, the child will be able to have eye control. just take care of the child and don't allow people talk down on you or talk down on your child. Make sure that you build the self-esteem of this child because it is dependent on you.
So progress so far, what advice will you have to give to those with albinism?
Oh, my advice to persons with albinism is you are unique the way you are. You don't have to look like everyone else. Find your strength. Find what makes you stand out other than your skin. Build yourself to the point where the society look up to you for solutions to world problems. Don't wallow in self-pity. You're beautiful the way you are. Mingle with others. Build your capacity to stand up. Have skills. Build your knowledge base. And the sky will be your starting point.
Interesting. It has been Constant Onyemechi, and she has been telling us about albinism, how we can manage it, and also advising the public on they should not treat those with albinism differently. So I have learned so much. If you've not learned, at least you've picked up one thing from today. So this is the much we can take on this topic, albinism, and I hope you go spread the message out there, and do not, I repeat again, do not discriminate those with albinism. This is Health 247, and if you want to keep watching us, you can follow us on all our social media platforms on Official Rapid TV, or you can keep watching us on Channel 176 on Star Times. So see you next time and same time on a different episode on Health 247. Bye bye for now.